Hello, everyone. Welcome to Indie Game Arcade, the premier podcast all about indie games. In this episode, we're talking all about the Stone of Madness. My name is Chris, and I am playing solo this week. Joseph's run got ended, and I'm waiting for him to respawn next week. So wish me luck with this one. I wasn't prepared to go right on my own. Some things came up and we decided, you know what, let's just go for it. So also, obviously, this is not the premier podcast about indie games. I want to give a really quick shout out to No Small Games, which is a great indie game podcast that I just discovered recently and have been listening to the latest episodes while going back and binging quite a few as well. It's a really great podcast. If you love indie games, obviously you do because you're listening to this one and you're hearing all these words in your ears. Go give that one a listen if you haven't listened to that one already. It's fantastic. But let's get into our game this week.
Game start!
So the Stone of Madness released January 28th, 2025, developed by The Game Kitchen, also known for developing the Blasphemous series. And let me tell you, there are some things that definitely carry over from that series, not, directly, but the idea of a very religious heavy kind of story definitely carries through. And also the Spanish influence, obviously, because this is a Spanish development studio. Also published by Tripwire Presents. Right now, it is on sale at a 10% discount as of recording, but the regular retail price is $29.99. They also do have a bundle where you can purchase it with the soundtrack for a little bit more, and the soundtrack is amazing. If you are a big fan of soundtracks from some of these games, this is a really good get. Especially a good one for if you like to have something to listen to while you're reading, which is me. Hello, I'm the problem. I can't believe I just made a Taylor Swift reference. Jesus. Anyway, this is what happens when I do this solo. What a terrible idea this was. You guys, you're going to have to blame Joseph for this. This is going to go off the rails really bad. For a quick description, The Stone of Madness is a real-time isometric tactical stealth game set in an 18th century Spanish monastery. Almost said spinach there for a minute. Players control 5 unique prisoners, each with distinct skills and psychological traits, as they navigate the monastery's dangers, manage their sanity, and uncover its mysteries to plan their escape. With that said, so I did say the game follows the 5 prisoners. You've got Agnes, Lenora, Eduardo, Emilia, and Alfredo. They're all there for different reasons and have all been there for different lengths of time. And they all have different phobias, which are like a huge part of this game that I will explain in a little bit later. Those that have gotten to know me through this podcast, and if you know me from some of the other stuff that I've done through Nerd Sloth, you know I love lore and I love backstory. And there is so much backstory to all of these characters that you learn throughout the game, throughout playing them. And they are all so unique and also interesting. So far, based on where I am, Eduardo is my favorite. He's this big, cuddly brute who is mute and afraid of the dark. That is his phobia. But he's such a big sweetheart. I love this guy. He's great. Lenora, very, very quick runner-up as well. Like, she's just great. She's this very bloodthirsty, take no prisoners lady, but yeah, I'll get there. She's great, though. She's great. The big overall goal, obviously, is to escape. This game starts with you playing as Alfredo, who is a priest that basically started uncovering corruption there in this monastery. And as he began to speak out against the corruption and the things he found as he was investigating, the powers that be in this place declared him mad and imprisoned him there as well. So he's kind of your more lucid guy, and he is the one that really is doing the investigating. This is a very investigation, I don't want to say investigation heavy, but the plot narrative does revolve around somewhat of a mystery and an investigation, and Alfredo really is your man on the ground doing the work for that stuff. While the others are mostly utility to help you accomplish those goals as well. But like he is the investigator, right? He's the Sherlock of this thing. the aspect of him doing his investigating and all the other characters having those different utilities and things and being able to switch between them all is the core concept of this game. This is what the game is built around. Again, like I said, you alternate between 5 characters, utilizing their unique skills to perform actions. These are also upgradable, and each character does have a different expertise. For example, I was talking about Lenora earlier. She's basically an assassin. Eduardo is, they call him a giant. And to explain that, he's like the muscle. Not in the same way as Lenora. Like, Eduardo's not going to go, well, I mean, you can, but he's not really the go kill type. He is the move heavy objects, break open a locked door type. So the big feats of strength kind of guy. He also has this thing about him that's very handy in that he has been the prisoner that has been at this monastery the longest. There is an aspect of this game where there are tons of other patients around you, like at all times. Like you're sneaking around through all this stuff, this labyrinth of a monastery, trying to do the things you want to do, trying to avoid guards, right? And there are lots of these patients that, really are disturbed. Not that the characters you're playing don't have their own issues. I mean, they're there for a reason. But certain characters, if you do something with them, like start trying to loot something like a barrel, look for stuff, start trying to sneak around in an area you're not supposed to be in, some of those other patients will start causing a disturbance, making noise, getting upset. That can draw the attention of the guards. However, because Eduardo's been there for such a long time, everybody's very used to Eduardo. He can usually do whatever without setting anybody off. So he's got like that second utility there that makes him very, very powerful to have as part of your team. And when I say team, it's basically that even though you have 5 characters that you will be able to play over time, you don't get them all like right away. Each day, and I will explain how all this stuff functions, but you select 3 to go out into the monastery with. So anyway, Eduardo, always on the team. He's great. We talked about him to an exhaustive length. You've also got Amelia, who is this little girl. She's basically a rogue. She is the best sneak. She can hide in places the others can't. She can sneak through tight spaces and small places that the others can't, like pass through gates, essentially, that have like, the barred gates where you would have to find the key or break it. She can just slide right through the dang thing. And then you also have Agnes, who is this old woman. She is a witch who can cast spells, doing things like manipulating light and darkness, incapacitating people, healing. But for everything that all of these characters do and do well, there's always some kind of cost. Like anything Eduardo does when he's lifting, let's say, a heavy object, it will make noise, which could draw the guard's attention if there is a guard within earshot of what he's doing. Or with Agnes, every time she casts a spell, it takes a toll on her health. So there is always like that caveat, that management side of everything that you have to be very careful with. And speaking of that, so you've got your sanity management. Each character, as I said earlier, has specific traumas, phobias that affect their mental health. So you have a pool of sanity, essentially. And as that pool depletes, if it gets down to 0, it can trigger one of these, essentially like a traumatic event, which could lead to something with a negative effect, like developing paranoia, dementia. They could go through like a bout of violence or something, which will alter how they play or alter something about the game involving them. So those are definitely negative things. So you have to be very, very careful with managing those phobias. So for instance, I'll just talk about what some of those phobias are. If Eduardo is left in darkness, he can't perform the duties you want him to. This was something that happened with me. I had him and Alfredo having a lantern. Eduardo could follow Alfredo around and be fine because, light. But then I ended up needing Alfredo to go do something else. And I was like, I'll have him go do something else. I need Eduardo to try to break this door down while he does that. Since Alfredo left, it left Eduardo in the darkness. Eduardo was too scared. He couldn't break down the door. He'll just cower in fear while his sanity meter starts ticking down until you move him into the light or you move Alfredo back with his lamp to bring the light back to him. Likewise, Lenora is afraid of fire. Alfredo is afraid of corpses. Amelia is afraid of gargoyle statues. While some of that feels like, okay, well, I'll just avoid situations like that and then it won't be an issue, but it's literally impossible. And I'll explain why that is. So let's first go into stealth and exploration. This is a big place. It's a big monastery, very labyrinthine. There's guards everywhere. There's also those other patients that I talked about that might alert the guards if you do something they don't like and they get riled up. The main thing at the beginning of the game is Alfredo sees this woman being beaten and taken away. He wants to know where they're taking her. This is kind of what begins the journey of sneaking around, meeting your companions one by one. So because there's so much sneaking to be done, guards to distract or kill, there's fire lanterns everywhere, there's darkness, there's statues. The phobias make it so that you might get into a situation where it's like, okay, well, I'll get Lenora to go and take this guard out. Then you realize, oh, Alfredo can't get in there to investigate if I kill this guard. So you might be like, okay, well, I'll do that. Then I'll have Eduardo go in and move the body somewhere. But then it's like, what if there is fire in that room somewhere? And then you're like, suddenly, okay, so Lenora can't go in there to take this guard out. Or let's say there isn't fire. She goes in, takes the guard out. Eduardo needs to go hide that body for Alfredo, but it's dark. So Eduardo can't go in there. So there's tons of puzzles like that where you have to work around their phobias. And to complicate matters, there's also time progression in this game. There's a day and night cycle. The guards are more active during the day, but the caveat to that is at night, ghosts will appear, and you can't get rid of those ghosts. And they're called something else. I didn't write the name down and totally forgot it because it is a name I am unfamiliar with. So I'm going to call them ghosts. They can only be temporarily stunned by Alfredo using a cross and doing a certain little ritual. And if they catch you, they will just drain your sanity, knock you out. You can, instead, if you want, when it hits night, you can choose to rest, going back to your cell at night. And then here, each character has action points that they can spend to do different things. Like Eduardo can craft items. Lenora might play a tune on her violin, which can give you a specific amount of sanity back for the whole team. Alfredo or Agnes have some bits of healing. But a lot of the time, everyone needs certain materials to do everything, such as Alfredo to do healing, he needs bandages, which means Eduardo needs to create bandages for Alfredo to do his thing. Or if I talked about Lenora can play her violin, but her violin, you can only play it so many times then it breaks. So then Eduardo would need to make her a new violin. But Eduardo needs materials to make all these things. So while you're out and about playing the game, doing the investigating, sneaking around, you're also needing to look for materials. So looting whatever barrels are around, chests, anything that you can find, looking for all the good stuff. As far as the progression and flow of this game, here's something that I didn't realize until I got to that point. But in all the media that I had seen around this game, I had no idea that this was going to happen. There's actually 2 different campaign modes. And depending on a choice that you make after, I want to say it's an hour and change. I think I got to this point maybe an hour 40 in because I was really goofing around a lot. There's something you can do, and you can pick to give a specific item to one of 2 people. Depending on what you do, you're going to end up in one of 2 different campaigns. The Corrupt Hand of the Church is a longer campaign, or the Gate of St. Jerome, which is a shorter campaign, totally changing the story that you experience. Again, I had no idea this was going to be a thing. I think that's really awesome and definitely adds for some replayability. Also, when I was telling you about how you only choose 3 characters to operate at one time each day, and you choose that, once you take your rest at night, spend your action points, choose to rest, and then you're prepping for the next day. That's when you choose which 3 characters you're going to operate for that day. So you can really change up your gameplay style, your plans, your strategies based around what characters you go with, because some of them are much more stealthy versus others. Characters like Lenora and Amelia will be way stealthier versus characters like Eduardo or Agnes, with, I would say, Alfredo very much kind of the in-between. Do you want more utility? Do you want more stealth? So let's get into the art of this game. I mean, let me say again real quick about the music. The music is haunting and beautiful. I talked about that a little bit at the top of the episode. But the art is gorgeous. It is a very hand-drawn style. It has a lot of fully animated cutscenes throughout this game that sometimes remind me of a very dark, I would say, earth tone-laden Don Bluth film. Like, I'm thinking of Anastasia kind of era Don Bluth. Obviously, that is not an equal, like, one-to-one, like, oh, it's totally this style. It just gives me a lot of, like, reminders of that. Maybe a little bit of All Dogs Go to Heaven thrown in that for sure. But it definitely evoked that kind of feeling, especially like watching some of those cutscenes. But it's a very gorgeous looking game. So overall, my experience with this game, it's got 3 difficulties to it when you first start playing. And I found that playing it on normal difficulty was still actually pretty challenging. And that's coming from someone who does play a lot of puzzle-minded games. I think the biggest challenge of this game, when you boil it down, you are always solving 2 puzzles at one time. There's always the environmental puzzle of how do I get from A to B with all the obstacles in my way? And then there's that second puzzle of how do I do that with the added limitations of each character, meaning those phobias. So it's definitely a huge exercise in critical thinking, which is a lot of fun for somebody like me. And if you are someone that really likes to exercise your brain in indie games like this, you are really going to enjoy this. It has some really intense puzzle solving. With that said, I do want to caution, however, that if you are someone that is sensitive to topics such as abuse, mental distress, or sensitive to graphic violence, you will definitely see some very sharp depictions of all of those things in this game. Is it like more gratuitous than other games? Absolutely not. But sometimes when you watch a game trailer, those things aren't always evident from watching the trailers. And this one was just like, I always saw the potential for those things to be in it, but I didn't see it in the trailers. And then just playing the game, I can say that, yeah, there's definitely like strong hints of abuse. Very obviously a lot of mental distress. Like that is part of the core game, is the idea of mental distress and mental breakdowns and trauma. That is like the story of this game. And then while there's not always graphic violence, there is some. There's like one cutscene in particular around that hour and change mark I was talking about that does have something pretty graphic in it. So just wanted to share that with you as a trigger warning in case you don't happen to see one when you're thinking about whether you want to play this game or not. But again, if you like puzzles, if you like critical thinking, if you love animation, this is a game I would 100% recommend, and I can't wait to play more of. That is the Stone of Madness. And yes, there is a stone. I didn't... I could have said that, but like, I don't want to share too much about the actual plot, because the plot is really intriguing. It's really cool. And like I said, I haven't beat it yet. I'm nowhere near beating it. from what I have experienced so far, I'm very, very into this story, and I can't wait to see it to its fulfillment.
Combo!
As far as other indie games I've been playing this week, there's two specifically I wanted to talk about. The first is Mika and the Witch's Mountain. This released on January 22nd. It had been available early access for quite some time, and I actually had purchased it when it first came out in early access, and I think that was back in October of 2024, but I had just never gotten around to actually playing it. The full release came out on the 22nd, so I'm now finally getting into it, and it is very much an homage to Kiki's Delivery Service, and features those visuals that are very much like, if I was going to pick another game that it looks like, I would probably say A Hat in Time. So somewhere around those like very upgraded N64 style graphics and kind of like that Legend of Zelda Wind Waker vibe, which suits it really well. It's very cute, it's bright, it's vivid, has a ton of charm to it with a lot to explore. I'll probably have more to say once I finish the game because I'm only maybe a little over an hour in. I just kind of did like the first act of the game, and I'm not sure how many there are. I would guess it's either going to be 3 or it's going to be 5. So I finished Act 1. I am a delivery girl on my broomstick. It's a lot of fun. There is so much to explore, which is what I enjoy about it so far. So I do have a playthrough that will be the part 1 will be up on our YouTube, youtube.com/nerdsloth. I will warn you though, like that first episode of the playthrough is going to be me just doing a lot of exploring the island because I just wanted to see what all was around, see all the different NPCs, kind of get a layout of the land. And it was just such a beautiful, like it is a beautiful looking game. So that was kind of like my incentive. I just really wanted to explore this place. It really feels so Studio Ghibli. And I was just so excited to finally get into this one. It was just delightful. The second game I wanted to get to and talk about that I've been playing is called Stray Path. This game releases February 6th, so the day after you might be listening to this. This was a real surprise for me. This is a roguelike deck builder, but it has a bit of a free cell solitaire mechanic to it as well, where you're presented with several cards you can attack or interact with and sort of choose your targets at will. They won't attack unless you do. It's almost like the attacks kind of happen simultaneously. So the cards are basically your enemies. They have like a certain amount of block and attack on them. And you don't really have attack cards per se. I'll explain that in a moment. You just have like an attack and amount of shield or block or whatever that you can sort of build up as you like upgrade things as you get farther in the game. So it's like as you click on one, it'll execute like in a split second your shield, your attack versus the enemy shield, enemy attack. Whatever cancels each other out with all the math and stuff like that will happen, or whatever damage needs to happen will happen. So hopefully that makes any sense. I do have a playthrough of this up on our YouTube as well, if you want to see it, youtube.com/nerdsloth. So it's basically, you've got 5 stacks of cards that you need to clear out. Some of those will have like, they'll be face up, but there's cards underneath it. Like I said, very free cell solitaire-ish. If I clear out one of those stacks and create an empty slot, one thing that I really like about this game is, let's say that on one of the other stacks, there's an enemy. I'm like, man, I definitely cannot fight this enemy right now. Like if I hit this enemy, and it will show you like just hovering over the enemy, it'll show you like on your health bar, like how much health you're going to lose on that attack, which is great. It is fantastic for strategizing. If you've got a free slot open, you can move any card to that slot out of the way, just like free cell. So you can just be like, shrink, move him over. It'll flip over the card that was underneath it. So maybe those will be other cards that you can attack for now. Or maybe it's a weapon card that you can drag down to one of I believe it's 2 or 3, can't remember which, weapon slots available for your character that you're playing, which is a cute little cat with 2 different color eyes. And you can use that weapon against them. Like maybe it's a sword that does like 8 damage. And usually, unless you have the boomerang, it'll exhaust that card as soon as you use it. There is a lot you can do with this. There's a lot of strategizing you can do, but like done in such a simple setup. It was very surprising to me how well done this was. You can also get upgrades, getting through like different rounds and stuff, opening chests that, like I said, will do different things like upgrading. You can choose to upgrade your attack or your armor or your luck. I definitely recommend boosting either your attack or your defense for a little while. That definitely helped me a lot. The boomerang item was really awesome. That one I had so much fun with, and I think it does like 5 damage. You kill an enemy with it, it comes right back to your inventory. So you can just like, as long as you save it for those low health enemies, you can just keep using that thing, and it does not count as one of your attacks. So that enemy won't attack you. So it's fantastic. It's like getting free attacks. You can strategize a lot with that one. Really enjoyed that. So you're basically progressing through multiple rounds, I think 6 before you move on to a higher level within your run. And the enemies, with any roguelike like this, will become progressively harder. It's really fast to learn, very easy to understand, and a ton of fun. There's lots of unlocks for you to earn as you collect souls, which you earn 1 per defeated enemy. So there's so many reasons for replayability. You can unlock other characters. You can unlock more slots to be able to store items, relics, things like that upgrade your character. It is really, really cool. So February 6th, I'm buying it day 1 as soon as it comes out.
Final round!
We are trucking right along through this episode. Should we leave Joseph on Respawn? Should we just leave him there? Should I leave him in the pit and not throw him the rope? Maybe we'll just leave him down there. I've got 4 games on my radar wish list or play calendar that I want to bring to your attention. The first one being Whispers of the Eyeless. Now, this was actually released, but for early access on the 30th of January. Whispers of the Eyeless is a dark fantasy strategy RPG where you build a cult, harness forbidden powers, and cling to your sanity. Command disciples, outwit enemies in tactical turn-based battles, and shape the fate of Aranthor as you awaken the dead gods, wrath, desire, and madness. Can you tell I just read the Steam description there? That was a really good description. I like that a lot. This looks like a Darkest Dungeon roguelike with some Cult of the Lamb mechanics mixed in a little bit. The art style, 100% Darkest Dungeon. There's no getting around that. Looks like it could have even been made by the same artist. It doesn't have very many reviews so far, but the reviews are mostly positive. So I'm going to keep an eye on this early access game, watch the dev notes and updates while it hangs out in my wish list for a while, but it looks really promising. You guys know I love that Darkest Dungeon look. Darkest Dungeon, probably one of my top games of the last several years. Very, very addicting. I love how those games play. The idea of taking that model and applying it to other game genres and styles, that's going to be an attention grabber for me every single time. So very, very interested in this one. I'm going to keep an eye on it and see how things go. The next game is Keep Driving. This comes out February 6th. This is an atmospheric management RPG about life on the open road. Pick up hitchhikers, work odd jobs, customize and repair your car, and map your route across the country. It also seems like it's going to have an awesome soundtrack. Like, check out that trailer for it. It looks really cool. This is not the normal style game that I would play. I take that back, man. I play all kinds of weird indie games, but like, I don't think I've ever played a game quite like this one so far, unless you count, I don't know, maybe Death Road to Canada is probably the closest, but that one is sort of like run and gun / beat 'em up part to it as well, where you have to fight the zombies and everything. This one is really just about like managing what you're doing and making choices as you go. So in a way, I guess more visual novel in a sense, but it looks fantastic. It sounds fantastic. And I think maybe I will play this for next week. We'll see. But it looks really cool. I'm very excited to at least check it out. I don't know, maybe it'll be my topic next week. We'll find out. Slender Threads is my next one. This comes out the day after on February 7th. In this paranormal point-and-click adventure, a traveling salesman races to stop a string of horrific deaths in a quiet seaside town before he's next. Looks super creepy and has a very storybook-style animation. Like, if you have ever played the game Franbo, it has given me very similar vibes. I guess Little Misfortune kind of fits in there too, but this, to me, looks much more akin to Franbo out of the two because of some of the very violent looking design in some of this stuff. If you played Franbo and you watch the trailer for this, I think you're going to understand where I'm going. Just gives me a lot of similar vibes to that, but with, you know, an adult character and set in what looks to be maybe some kind of Eldritch style conspiracy. Not really sure. But it has my attention. I'm very excited to see what the price point on this is going to be when it comes out. It's been on my wish list for, oh my gosh, a long time. I think since this thing was first announced, man, I think that was like a year ago. I could be wrong, but I feel like it's been sitting in that wish list for a very, very long time. My last one here is Stories from Soul, the Gun Dog, coming out February 20th. I know this is a very long way away. I just really wanted to talk about this one because I'm so excited for this. This is a visual novel with a little bit of point and click action and choices matter direction, but set in a very Gundam anime style story and setting. It's very heavily inspired by the games from the PC 9800 era and looks a lot like it, but oh man, the visual and the animation are just absolutely gorgeous. And I think this game is supposed to be just like a part one in a series of games called Stories from Soul. I mean, it's really probably going to depend on how successful this first game is. So I'm really interested to see how it does, what this full plan develops into. As someone who really loves a good mecha style story, like Gundam Wing, Code Geass, or Gunbuster, those being like my top, I am so excited for this one. I'll probably have more to say about it once it releases, because if it goes the way I'm hoping it does, I'll probably see what the reviews are on this like day one. If it's looking fairly favorable, like I'm buying this, I'm probably going to be doing a full playthrough of this thing, because this looks like it was made 100% for me. This is probably the one out of everything that I am the most excited for. And I really, real quick, want to take some time to ask all of you, what indie games are you playing? We've never really asked that question, but it's something that we've wanted to and kept forgetting to put in our notes to ask. We've talked about this so many times too. But we wanted to ask, like, what indie games are you playing? What indie games are you excited for? Let us know. Send us a message over on like Blue Sky, which is at NerdSloth, or send us an email. You can do that by sending one to podcasts@nerdsloth.com and just put in the subject line Indie Game Arcade or IGA. So I just know which show it's going to. I intercept all the email. It just helps me like know like which one it's for, because we have like a lot of different things. So that'll help me organize stuff. Otherwise, I'm going to go insane. But you know what is not insane? You doing me a quick favor and sharing this episode with someone who loves indie games. As always, you can catch me playing some of the games we discussed on the show, along with tons of other Let's Play content over on our YouTube channel, youtube.com/nerdsloth. You remember that time I mentioned that during the episode? Like 3 times? I don't know. You can also catch hundreds of hours of bonus content for just $1 a month by subscribing to the Nerdsloth Treehouse over at patreon.com/nerdsloth. We also have an exclusive podcast there called the Nerdsloth Podcast for those at the $5 tier as well, along with a few other exclusives only available to those members. At nerdsloth.com, you can find a link to our Discord server. That link is also available if you are on like our Blue Sky or any of our other social medias, and you click the link in our bio, you'll be able to find a link to the Discord when you get to our link tree. It'll be there. We have a lot of people in our Discord server. They're such a great group of people. We love them to death. We have met all these people through doing all the podcasts that we have, and a lot of them have become our best friends, lifelong friends. They're great people. So come over and join us. You can also join our subreddit if you like for Indie Game Arcade and help me post more reviews of the indie games that we talk about or any indie games that you're playing so more folks can find games that suit their playstyle.
Game over.
That's game over for me. My name is Chris, and I'll continue on the next episode.
Continue.
Indie Game Arcade is recorded and produced by Sloth Creative. If you're looking for more gaming content, head over to youtube.com/nerdsloth. For additional podcasts, go to nerdsloth.com. If you'd like to support the show, there are multiple tiers available at patreon.com/nerdsloth, with hundreds of hours of bonus content from everything we do at Sloth Creative, including bonus gameplay videos of the games we talk about on the show. The theme music for the show is Retro Game Tapes by Audio Lime. If you'd like to get in touch with us, or if you're an indie game developer and would like us to consider reviewing your game, send us an email to podcasts@nerdsloth.com with the subject line Indie Game Arcade.